Tech Talk with Mathew Dickerson. Mathew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
And Mathew Dickerson, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Ian. Great to be chatting to you again.
Absolutely. Got some gee whiz bang ones today. We've got smartphones telling us things about bridges.
Telling us whether bridges are about to fall down. Hopefully you know a bridge is about to fall down a long time before you're driving across that bridge. But there's a whole range of ways that engineers try and work out when they need to do major maintenance and minor maintenance on a bridge, and they might take lots of photos of different parts of the structure. They might mount various devices on those bridges, but they're all fairly expensive and cumbersome and time-consuming. So some researchers came up with this idea of doing a couple of things. First of all, they thought that the accelerometers on a smartphone are incredibly accurate. So they started doing some testing there, and they mounted a smartphone in a car and then drove back and forth over various bridges that were at various states of disrepair to see whether or not those accelerometers were giving accurate enough measurements to say that a bridge was moving more, for example, than it might be meant to move, therefore it needs some major maintenance. So that actually showed some really good results, and they thought, well, that's fascinating. If we're going to mount some smartphones in a car and drive them over lots of bridges, we can get that data. But then they went a step further, and they said, what about if we don't use a smartphone that's mounted in our car? What about if we use the smartphones of lots of users out there already driving over these bridges? So they got Uber, and they did a partnership with Uber, and they said, we want to install an app on smartphones of Uber drivers, and then just while the phone's sitting in their car driving around, we'll see if we can get that same data. And they got the data accurate to within 3% of the original data when they had a smartphone mounted in the car. So they're now looking at a way that they can use smartphones, at this stage, this is across America, smartphones across America, where they can actually just have them in their normal usage, driving around, going across bridges, and then by seeing how much movement is on that bridge, seeing whether they then got to do some major maintenance on that bridge. So it sounds like a really clever way to use the crowd, if you like, all these people out there with those accelerometers in their smartphones to give really accurate information.
As you say, by using the crowd too, that whole piggybacking concept too, that's going to save them money. Like the actual surveyors or engineers aren't going out there themselves. They've just got access to that data updated, periodically.
That's exactly right. And so they can keep having that data fed through. Then obviously have an algorithm set up that as that data gets to a point where it's showing that bridges might be aging, then they would send out some engineers and say, it's now time to look at that bridge. And they're estimating that with old bridges, they could probably extend the maintenance time frame by about 2 years before they've got to do a major look at it. But on new bridges, they're talking about maybe extending that maintenance interval by 15 years because you're getting all this really good feedback all the time. So you're right, saves money, saves time, and gives you more accurate data so that if a bridge is actually getting to the stage where it needs maintenance sooner, that can be alerted to engineers as well.
Do the smartphones need anything different doing to them, re-engineered to do it, or how does it work with this accelerometer, do you know?
Yeah, it just really relies on the actual phone having the app installed, a particular app installed, because all modern smartphones have got accelerometers now. So they've got, and they're really accurate actually, so they've got that information there for a whole range of things they do. Using it in this way is just another use for all that technology built into that phone. There's so much built into each phone.
Sounds fantastic. Also, too, Matt, the Instagram now, a lot of people use Instagram. They're looking at different age verification systems, are they?
Yeah, this is in particular over in the UK and European Union, where they're trying to get to the point where they want users to have accurate ages. Now, there's a reason that mainly young boys like to lie about their age on Instagram because they want to access some adult material. Back in the old days, young boys used to sneak into newsagents and try and convince the newsagent they were over 18 before they could buy that magazine. Well, they're trying to do the same thing now with social media. So a lot of them lie about their age. And again, how does a social media app know when you type in a date of birth that you really are younger than that date of birth? Well, as it so happens, there's a few ways for them to do that. And now they're actually getting to the point where they're trying to get to the stage where you need to prove your age on certain apps, especially when you want to access certain material. So in the past, you used to have to upload an ID, so a driver's license. If you've if you're over 18, you've probably got a driver's license. So that was one method they used. Or you could actually get 3 adults to vouch for the fact that you were, in fact, an adult. So you had to convince 3 other people. I assume they went for 3 to make it a bit harder for those young people to try and convince some older people. But what they're doing now is they're looking at things like basically sending a video selfie in of yourself. And they're getting to the stage where they believe they can identify the age of someone. If they're aged from 6 to 12 years of age, they can get the data accurate to within 1.36 years. And if you're between 13 and 19, getting the data accurate to 1.5 years. So you might still be able to get away with it if you're 17. You might be able to trick the technology and make it think you're over 18. But it's pretty convenient for the social media app to do a quick check without having to involve individuals, humans, to check it. It's basically just using a video selfie to prove that you are that age. The reason the 6 to 12-year-olds, why I mentioned that in there, obviously we hope they're not accessing some of the adult material there, but just to use a social media app at any form, forgetting about adult content, you need to be over the age of 13 or 13 or over. And that's done from a mental health perspective. They're worried about very young people accessing social media and then being exposed just to the whole range of things that happens when you're on social media. So that's the 2 critical ages in the social media world, 13 years of age and 18 years of age. So using a video selfie to check that is quite a fascinating way to do it.
I wonder, these algorithms, they're getting very, very good, aren't they?
They are getting very good, and they're not perfect, but they're making it very efficient. When you've got a social media platform that might have over 1 billion users on it, it's pretty hard to employ enough people to go through and manually check those things. So you really have to rely on technology, rely on artificial intelligence to do some of the heavy lifting, some of the grunt work for you to be able to make sure you can keep that platform as clean and working as efficiently as possible.
Matt, speaking of heavy lifting, I believe they're looking at 3D printed custom knee replacements.
Oh, I do like the segue there, Ian. Very well done. So you've got 3D printers now that are being made to use custom knee replacements. Now, I've seen a bit of work on knee replacements in the past. I've been fascinated by a few things that happen in the human body. And when I've looked at it in the past, what they do is they basically take someone's knee when they're doing a knee replacement, and the surgeon might have 3 or 4 different knee replacements ready to go. And when they compare that knee that they've taken out of a person to the replacements, oh, look at this, Iain's a size 3 and Mathew's a size 4, they just slot those knees in that are the closest match. The problem is that of the 62,500 knee replacements that were reported in Australia last year, that were performed last year, about 20% of those were unsatisfactory. People had the new knee in, didn't quite fit right, didn't feel right, didn't give me the mobility I expected to have. So it's not perfect yet, even though it might be better than the old one, it's still not great. That's mainly because it's a bit of luck. It's a bit like a pair of shoes. Sometimes you put on a pair of shoes, oh, these shoes fit fantastically. You put on another shoe type, shoe brand, doesn't quite fit the same. And that's what's been happening with knees in the past. But now, if you do, before you have your knee surgery, you have a 3D CT scan to map the entire anatomy of the knee, so you get a really accurate view of what that knee looks like. That's then sent to an organisation in America. That scan is sent to an organisation in America. They then 3D print a knee replacement that is obviously very close to your current knee. So it comes then, sent, obviously couriered across from America in a short period of time. You go and have the knee surgery, another knee's put in that basically matches what you had before, the knee you had before, but new and shiny rather than old and worn out like the knee might be. So the satisfaction level is much higher. The actual time to do the surgery is quicker because the surgeon doesn't have to go along and compare a knee to certain sizes they've got there. They know they've got the knee ready to go. And so this is happening right now. There's about 20 surgeons across the nation that are doing this right now as we speak.
Certainly the whole concept of a custom knee is better than the off-the-rack one, isn't it?
It is exactly right. If someone said to me, do you want a custom knee or one that we've got sitting off the rack, I'd take the custom knee every time.
Now, Matt, we'll finish off today. We've got transfusion of lab-grown blood.
Now, we have talked before, or I talked with Richard before you came along, with some things that are growing in the lab. Now they're growing meat in the lab, for example, so you don't have to kill a cow to go and eat some meat. Lab-grown blood, though, do you feel okay with this one, Andy? Would you feel okay with a blood transfusion where the blood that was being put into you didn't come out of another human, but it came out of a lab. This is happening right now in the UK. There's a world first clinical trial occurring, growing that blood, and I'm not sure if growing is the right term, but generating that blood in the laboratory. And let's face it, everything's made up of atoms of different elements out there. So if you get those in the right combination, then that should be fine. And blood isn't that complicated, so it's actually relatively easy. I'm not saying that we can do it at home at the kitchen sink, but it's relatively easy for scientists to take those components that are in blood and create blood that's basically grown in the lab. They're doing this at the moment, and they actually believe that this blood is of higher quality than a blood taken out of a human because it's fresher. You don't have to take it out of a human, then store it at certain temperatures before you put it into you in a transfusion. And if you get to the stage where you've got certain types of blood that are hard to get, maybe some of the rarer blood types, for example, then they can grow those blood types in the lab ready to go into a human. Sounds fascinating, sounds a bit scary, but this is the future we've got to look forward to.
Certainly is, and that would only help with the situation with demand for donors and that sort of thing if they can sort of get it off the shelf and out of the laboratory like that. And of course, it sounds like a brewery for vampires too, doesn't it?
It does sound a bit scary, doesn't it? And the researchers are saying they'll probably still use human blood most of the time because it's cheaper to get that. People go and donate blood for nothing. It's more expensive to grow that blood in the laboratory. But if you've got a shortage of one type or you've got a rare blood type, this is the solution that people are looking towards.
They might turn into blood factories down the track in years to come. You never know.
They may do.
Mathew Dickinson, as always, thank you very much for your time for Tech Talk this morning on 2DU Breakfast.
My pleasure, Iain.